looking at the clock right now, so I'll move when I'm over. So, I've spoken on experience, strength, and hope a number of times. My sobriety date is, let's see, let's pull that up. It's really easy to do, right? I have, according to the 12 Steps companion app, I've got 17.81 years of sobriety. And I'm very excited about that. I get excited about the length of my sobriety every day because I did not know how to get sober. I thought drinking was the way of life. And that's true from a very early age. Let me start a little bit out of order. I'll just tell you right now, I have a wonderful life. I also have health problems. I also have relationship problems. I am desperately trying to find a way to retire, and that's not going exactly as planned. But I have a wonderful life. I started a law firm 30 years ago with a couple partners. I still have one of those partners, and he's also in this program. And he came in about 2.5 years before I did, and I did an intervention on him. And he was the guy with the problems. He was the crazy one, right? I thought, this guy, he needs it. And I remember that he would, after he got out of treatment and he was back with us, I would see him, actually my other partner and I would see him walking off to, we didn't know exactly where, but he was going at lunch, he was going to meetings. And we just thought this was just more craziness. And I didn't know anything about AA. Certainly didn't think that it was ever going to be part of my life. But this business that we started 30 years ago is thriving, and we've done amazing things with it. And when I do retire from it, I will be leaving behind a legacy for many other people to enjoy, profit from. So it's all great. My family life is really good. I married a woman after I got sober. I took on her 2 kids as my own, and have 2 kids from my first marriage. And we have a blended family, and it's a wonderful thing. So I am, life is bright for me. And I say that because AA has made it possible for me to have this thing. My wife would not be with me if I wasn't sober. We met online, Match.com. Yeah, and she was tired of dating guys who drank. And when she saw that on my profile, and at that point I had like a year, maybe a year and a half of sobriety, that was intriguing. I also had a couple of degrees, and that was also a requirement at first. So we've built a wonderful life together. But let me step back to where it was. As a young child, I discovered that alcohol was a solution. My parents drank. They seemed to have fun with their friends, and they'd have parties, and there would be drinking. And I could remember waking up. I think it was like a New Year's party that they were having at our house. I woke up to the sound of laughter and belligerence and all the things, and I remember walking out and seeing them just having a grand old time. And while they did drink, and they drank regularly, and I never really appreciated that my father or my mother drank to excess. And bad things didn't happen in our family, or at least as far as I could see, because of alcohol. So it was never a scary thing for me to see alcohol. I had a great uncle, my father's uncle, who seemed to be the black sheep of the family, and he would end up drunk and falling down, and they would just take care of him. But it didn't seem to be a bad thing either. So I grew up thinking that alcohol was the solution. I remember my father uh, uh, and his friend went and bought a brandy barrel that they were going to be crafty and make into a couple of chairs by cutting it in half and making it into the shape of a chair. And for a while before they started their craftiness, this brandy barrel was sitting in our house and it smelled of brandy. And I can remember going into that room by myself and just sticking my head into the brandy barrel and just inhaling this wonderful smell. And it was so alcoholic, but it felt so good. And I don't think I was intoxicated by it, but I was intoxicated in the way that, it made me feel emotionally. And I also remember at a very young age, elementary school, when I brought my friends home for lunch. My parents both worked, and this was back in the day when, walking off campus in an elementary school was permissible. And so we traipsed over to my house, and I introduced them to my father's bar. And I said, "Who wants a drink?" And none of them did. That didn't stop me from pulling out some slow gin and having a sip or whatever it was. I remember I did. I don't remember how much it was. But, I was going to show them that this was how you lived. So that was just the beginning of things. And, by the time I was in high school, I was drinking to blackout. I smoked a little pot, but pot was back in those days, it was a little more difficult to come by. You have to kind of go through back channels and dealers. So it wasn't exactly as easy as getting alcohol. As Jason said, tap somebody on the shoulder, they'll go get it for you. Somebody's older brother, they'll go get it for you. I mean, I even got to the point of buying some lame ass fake ID and going to some poor Mexican woman in this little shop, in the middle of nowhere, and showing her this ID that just was so fake, and she would just look at it and she'd sell me down. But drinking became regular. Drinking became a thing where I would figure out what days I could drink and still do the things I needed to do. My two older brothers were high achievers. My father was in the Navy. He was a highly ranked enlisted man, Master Chief, if you know the designation. So he was at the highest level of the enlisted class of Navy folks, and he had a lot of pride in that, and we were not allowed to embarrass him. And my brothers certainly didn't. My oldest brother, his aspiration was to become president of the United States, and he was serious. At least for a while, he was serious. He ended up after college and after law school going and working for a Washington state congressman, and then became a lobbyist, and all the things that set me up for, gosh, if only I could do what Mike does. And then my other older brother, he just a year younger than my oldest brother, he went to the Naval Academy. These people were so smart, and I was struggling in school. School didn't really appeal to me in the way that it seemed to appeal to them, because I just wanted to have fun, and alcohol was my way to have fun. I continued that habit all through college. I decided to go to law school because I thought, well, if I can go to law school, then I can demonstrate that I am just as good as my brothers. And if I go to law school, I can continue to drink because I will have done the thing that makes it okay for me to drink. I will have earned the right to do these things. And so in law school, I drank like crazy. I found other drugs to use and continued to do that. But the goal was get through law school, get a good job, and then you can continue to do this. I remember I interviewed at a law firm through means that are still hard for me to fathom. I ended up like number 3 in my class after the first year of law school. And that got me into the rooms of some pretty swanky law firms as a potential intern. And I got into this one law firm for an interview, and they were walking me around, showing me the place. We walked into this one room, and it was a bar in the law firm. It had a pool table. It had a waiter. It obviously was a place where people gathered and had fun. And I thought, I am home. This is exactly what I need. Unfortunately, they didn't offer me a job. So off I was looking for other things. But then in a couple of years, I interviewed with another law firm, and they also had a bar. And they did offer me a job. And despite the fact that this particular law firm was in Anchorage, Alaska, and I was living in California, I thought this would be a great idea. This new adventure, let's go to Alaska. They do the things that I like to do. Let's have a drink. And so, graduated from law school and ended up in Anchorage, Alaska for about 8.5 years. And I drank very heavily. I married a woman who I met when I was in high school. She did not drink. She drank a couple of times in high school, and then she stopped. She was the child of alcoholics. She was the caretaker of her parents. She was the caretaker of her sisters, and she became the caretaker of me. And I thrived on that because I knew somebody would have my back. I could drink to blackout, and I was fairly certain I would find my way home one way or another because she would probably be there. And when she wasn't there, I seemed to find my way home. I didn't have a lot of huge consequences until I finally did. And when I did, it was like walking off a cliff. I went from a day where I was flying high. I had found a girlfriend. I was thinking that I was very important, that I could have this secret relationship, and everything was working fine. And this just seemed like a natural progression of things, and I was entitled to it because I had done so much as a father, as a husband, even though I was a terrible husband, and I was a terrible father because I relied on my wife, who didn't drink, to take care of the kids, to take care of me. I thought I was great. I didn't see the fall. I did wonder from time to time over the years, when will alcohol grab a hold of me? I didn't think it had. Of course, I know now that when I'm even having those thoughts, alcohol already had control over my life. But I didn't appreciate that while I was drinking and having those thoughts. I thought, I'll see it coming, and then I'll be able to do something about it. So untrue. The only thing that allowed me to do something about it was when I ended up at a charity function where my wife was being honored for her great service to this nonprofit. We were at it was a dinner and an auction, and I was drinking heavily and didn't recognize this as one of those times where I needed to manage my drinking. For some reason, I got beyond that in the number of drinks and just continued to drink to the point where I was texting with my girlfriend at this dinner. That was noticed that I was texting with somebody. I ended up so drunk that I fell into a coat closet and couldn't get out. I had to be lifted and carried out of this place. And I don't know if any of you have been to this place. I'm not even sure. I don't think it exists anymore. But it was a private dinner club called The Ruins over on Queen Anne, Lower Queen Anne. And I thought, as I think back on the days, this was such an appropriate place for me to have my it was that night that my wife, driving me home, embarrassed for how I had behaved, having her sister suggest that she look at my phone, that she asked me what my phone password was, and because I was drunk enough, I gave her my password, and she saw the text messages. And the next morning, while I was hungover, and not in our bed, but in another bedroom. She asked me about that, and I didn't know what to say. I did. I mean, the world had just come crashing around me. She wanted me out of the house. I left the house. I ended up in a hotel, and within a couple of days, my oldest child, my son, came to me and he said, "You need to go into treatment." And I'm not sure what he knew about treatment, other than the fact that he knew that my partner, my business partner, had gone into treatment 2.5 years earlier. But he said, "You need to go into treatment." And because I am by training a problem solver, I said, "That's a good idea. I'll get around to that." And God bless him, tears were in his eyes. And he said, "No, you need to go now." And I couldn't think of anything else to say to him. This child, this adult now that I love, is crying in front of me, and I don't do crying very well. Um, he said, "You need to go now." And so, I'd like to say that, my eyes were opened and everything, fell into place at that point. Because I am a problem solver, I thought, well, the way to solve this problem of my child wanting me to go into treatment is to go into treatment. But it's just to get away from what's going on right here. And the treatment center that I chose was the treatment center that my business partner had gone to, and it was up in Canada. So it was far away. It was in another country. And I thought, this is a good place to hide. I still had no idea what AA was. I knew that this treatment center had something to do with AA. And so off I went to this treatment center for 28 days and learned for the first time everything about AA. I remember walking into this treatment center the first day, and it's not like, you start on day one because everybody's on day one. You're just pushed into the mix, and everybody else has been there for, maybe one day, maybe 28 days, some of them 90 days. And they are just on their rotation of different things that they're doing. And the first thing that they were doing when I got there was they were meeting with a local pastor who was talking about spirituality. I had no idea what they meant by spirituality, but what I did see were the 12 steps on the wall and the word God. And God was just antithetical to everything that I believed in. And I thought, well, this is going to be a problem. And when I was acknowledged, because I just walked into this room and asked to say anything, I said, well, this is a problem. And God bless her, the pastor, she said, "That's okay. You just sit there and we'll talk." She didn't challenge me. I was looking for a fight. I wanted to prove to her that I didn't belong there, even though I knew I couldn't leave, because leaving meant going back to the chaos that I had left behind. But I didn't see how AA worked. And it took all of those 28 days for me to have any sense of what AA was and what it offered me. And I still walked out of there having no idea what it meant to work the steps. I remember going around to people as the days were approaching that I was leaving the treatment center, despite the fact that they asked that I stay longer. And I said, no, I got to get back. Asking people, what does it mean to work the steps? And nobody would give me a satisfactory answer. And they just say, well, you work the steps. It doesn't help me at all. But, I left. I went back and did not repair well the relationship with my wife, and ended up going back to this girlfriend that I had. And, life was still topsy-turvy, but I wasn't drinking. I started going to meetings, and meetings were foreign and strange, and I didn't know how to act in them. They seemed very uncomfortable to me when I first got there, and people laughing, and it seemed that they were laughing at me, just made me very resentful, made me angry. I didn't see how this was going to help my sobriety. About 6 months into my sobriety, I walked into the rooms at Water's Edge. on the north end of Lake Union. And it had just been recommended to me by my former business partner, who was also still sober. And by chance, one of the first persons the first person I remember was a woman named Susan S. Some people know very well. And she gave me a hug. And now, the first time I got a hug from a woman at an AA meeting up at the treatment center, I thought, oh, well, this is what this is about. But it wasn't that kind of a hug, and I didn't interpret it that it was just, it's okay. We're glad you're here. And that that made me feel so comfortable and safe that I was able to sit down and I was able to hear the laughter in a different way. I was able to understand that everybody has their own experience, that hearing other people's experience helps us feel like we know what you're going through. We know what we know, what I'm going through, and we can make it. And I've really just attached myself to this idea as I've learned over the years. Bill and Bob, when they first met, that is what worked for them. Two alcoholics getting together and speaking with each other makes it all okay. And it makes it so I can make it through another day. And Water's Edge has provided that for me. I remember one of the folks at Water's Edge, Mike. He now lives over in Eastern Washington in the Okanogan, and many of you may know him as well. He's also a lawyer by training, and he said, "I've been drunk and I've been sober, and sober is better." And I love that. I love to remind myself whenever I'm thinking about drinking, because it does come into my mind. Whenever I think about taking a drug, that comes into my mind. I've been drunk, I've been sober, and sober is better. Early on, when I was really catching this program, I remember thinking, look, you did this for 47 years or 33 years until you were 47. That was the first half of your life. Why don't you just live the second half without alcohol and see how it goes? And as I said in the beginning, I have a wonderful life. The promises have certainly come true for me. The idea of drinking, while it does from time to time seem like that would be fun, I see people having fun, and I wonder, why can't I have that fun? I'm able to let that go, because I'm able to just as the book talks about at some point, from a point of neutrality, I can observe that. I don't have to attach myself to it. I can feel the same feelings, because I know I have parties at my house. I have parties with people outside of my house, and we do it without alcohol, and we have a great time. My current wife, who I've been married to now for over 15 years, she doesn't drink. Her family doesn't drink for the most part. Most people in her family don't drink. When we first got together, she took me to her house for a get together, and I didn't know about this not drinking thing as part of her family, but I remember everybody was having a great time, and I made this observation: there's no alcohol here. How are they having a good time at a party and there's no alcohol? That was something I had to process, but it was something I learned, and I have learned over the years how to have a great time. I've learned how to go to concerts without alcohol and have a great time. When I see people who are overindulging in alcohol, if I don't have to take care of them, they're not somebody I need to be mindful of to make sure that they're safe. It frankly just bores me to be around that behavior. And it's not that I dislike them for it. It's just that it's not entertaining anymore. To see somebody act stupid in the way that I acted stupid. I remember when I was still drinking, fairly young in my business career, And I happened to have the benefit of landing in first class on an airplane flight where the alcohol flowed freely for free. And I got drunk. And then I noticed sitting in seats a couple seats away from me were some former clients. And I made the mistake of going over and talking to them, and I was drunk. And I remember how their reaction to me was, "Good to see you." And it was like, after a moment, "We wish you would move on." And I didn't soon enough, right? I eventually did get the signal. And it's funny to me that even now, that being probably 35 years ago, I still remember, I still have this icky feeling in my stomach when I think about it, how I was acting in front of them as a drunk person. And I don't want to act that way in front of people. And I'm glad that, at this stage in my life, that is unlikely. It's certainly possible, because I have known people with as many years of sobriety as I have and more, who find themselves having that next drink. And the ones I know, they've made it back. Some people don't make it back. And I know I don't want to have to make it back. I believe I probably would come back, and it would be hard and it would be humbling, and I would work very hard to do it. And I only know that because I've seen people who I love and respect who have done it. So I would try to do it too. But I don't want to do that. I genuinely like my life. I can't say that about my life when I was an active alcoholic. I feared my life. I regretted many things. There are very few things that I regret as a sober person. And the ones that I do, I can make amends for. I've got the tools to deal with those types of things. And AA has provided me with that. This fellowship has provided me with a wonderful opportunity to live as a sober person. And that's not something that I ever aspired to. I thought sobriety was for losers. I thought you couldn't handle life if you had to do it sober. And what I've learned in this program is that I've been drunk and I've been sober, and sober is better. So thank you very much for letting me share.